Welcome to State of Unity podcast, where we talk with people who used to live the ordinary and are now living in the extraordinary. What is a way? Is it a place? When you throw or wash something away, what or where does that mean? On today's episode, we speak with Janelle Mills, a civil engineer focused on sustainability in West Africa. Janelle has an eye for deconstructing infrastructure to understand the why behind it, and then use this understanding to help influence behavior toward more sustainable practices. This guy that I used to work with, at one point, I think we were talking about weekend plans, and I was, going through my to-do list, like, I want to get this done and that done and this done. And he's like, I have that list too, but that list isn't going to change if I don't change it. And so if I decide to have fun that weekend, those things will still be there on Monday. It's fine. Like, it's not going anywhere. And that really helped me appreciate, I think, like, it's okay to not get these things done today and, maybe have fun, because this is maybe the only time with this other opportunity. I don't know. So that really, as weird as it sounded, allowed me to kind of relax a bit and just enjoy life a little bit more and not feel like my day is going to end if I don't get those 5 items checked off the list.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, for me at least, I've gotten to a point where I realize that this isn't a me versus anyone else race. It's a me versus me race. So if I don't get it done this week or next week, okay, but nobody else is in your lane. So
there's also
who
that.
are you trying to get ahead of right now? It didn't. Yeah, that helped me a little bit too, to just say, all right, you know what, if we're not going to do anything for 3 days, maybe we need to just lay here and be okay with laying here and not try to speed it up in any capacity. And I think not having a 9 to 5 at this point is also helping with that, because now I'm not constantly trying to beat this or beat that, or I'm just going with the flow, and what happens, and I'm learning to be okay with that.
Yeah, it's kind of a gift and a curse, right? So an aspect to what I was saying, I think that's more like your household tasks, right? Versus, like you were saying, like, you're the only one getting things done for the company. So that's a little bit more defined, like, I have these things that I need to get done at this time. And that's become more of a non-negotiable list for me, which helps me stay focused. And then come the end of the week, if I've gotten all those things done and it's a nice day to go to the beach, then I'm like, well, this is part of the bonus of why I'm doing this, is because now I'm not stuck in the office because it's not the specific time, but I actually got my work done, so I can enjoy the day if I choose to. Well, Janelle, thank you so much for joining me all the way from Ghana. Am I saying it right? Ghana?
Yes.
Okay. Where you are surprisingly only 4 hours ahead, right?
Yeah. 5,000 miles. But
5,000 miles in 4 hours. So I thank you again for reaching out. I don't know how we came across each other, but the little bit that I've learned about what you're doing over there is really exciting. I'm all for the environmental, the sustainability. That movement is, I think, what's going to keep this earth surviving for another 50 years or so. So definitely all for learning more about your mission and how we can support you and just what you have going on over there.
Yeah, at the moment I am trying to, it's a big goal, and I'm trying to break it into small pieces as much as humanly possible, so that I can figure out where at least I can wrap my hands around it as just me. So I'm a civil engineer by training, by trade. I spent a lot of years in New York, going to school, getting training, working in construction projects. And at some point I looked at the work I was doing. I was building a lot of things in New York City, a lot of transit hubs and bridges. My last project was an airport, and I'm extremely proud of all of those projects. But I was looking at what I was doing and I was thinking, there are so many other ways and places I can have an impact. And I thought back to where my family's from. We're from West Africa originally. They came over to the US, and that's how, I ended up there. But really looking at what exactly does the continent need, and how can I start shifting us in a way towards development,
And
which
you
is
were,
how,
sorry, you were first generation, right? Like your
yes,
parents were the ones that had moved over. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Um, it's definitely I think they call it a third culture experience, where your parents come with one, but you're in a different culture, and so you end up doing an interesting blend of the two and being
Mm.
able to pick and choose. And from my experiences, really in college, I started flying between the two countries because my parents had moved back to West Africa, and just driving through and seeing some of the conditions people were living in, seeing how infrastructure was developing or not developing. It's always been in the back of my mind since I'd been going to college. How do I take this one technique, this one concept that I learned, how do I apply it? Um, Fast forward to now, after all this construction experience, and I'm looking at the country and I'm saying, okay, how do we take the natural resources we have and how do we preserve them? Um, Simple things like soil erosion, or like, how do you clean wastewater that comes out of people's homes? What do you do with it? This is definitely a country that very much still relies on septic tanks outside of people's houses. Um, Little septic tanks, and something that theoretically could be gray water, but it's not quite. Um, the water that goes from your toilet goes into the septic tank, but any water that comes out of your kitchen sink, your bathroom sink, your shower flows into an open gutter on the side of the street. It's gray water, and if we were treating it, that would be amazing, but we're not. So it just kind of flows. It meets other trenches and then eventually flows into a river. And part of my thinking was, okay, how do I design something that allows you to address that issue? Because I mean, it's theoretically gray water, but because it's open, anything can be put into it, anything can flow into
Mhm.
it. Animals can take some of it. There are people in certain regions where they'll just stick a bucket in it and they'll use the water, and you sit there and you think to yourself, like, no, that's not really the point, friends. So I am looking at ways to put together micro and macro infrastructure projects that can help with, at the moment, looking specifically at wastewater treatment. How do we take water that comes out of people's homes and reuse it? And I think that the original concept is that theoretically you should be able to treat water and then to be able to disperse it out into the natural environment. That's the entire point. That's one of the best ways to clean it. But not everything that's flowing through this man created structure is good for the environment or good to have exposed to the environment, to the air, and not have protected. So I'm specifically looking at different ways to treat that with plants, with different filtration methods. And in so doing, the reason I like plants, I just love dealing with plants in general, but it's also, we're in a tropical country. Plants are abundant here. There are lots of different ways that you can utilize them to either do food cultivation, or to reutilize that water. And maybe it doesn't have to flow outside of the house. Maybe it could be self-contained. And just looking at different methods to be able to deal with it in a more sustainable way than we're currently doing it. Because if you actually follow these waterways, this gray water, I say use quotation marks because I don't know if it really is. It eventually meets a stream, and that stream eventually flows out into the ocean. Well, like, it's disturbing, right? Like I spent the first couple of years of my my career in engineering working on a bridge project, and we had this giant system to filter out all the water, all the rainwater that came off of the bridge. And I remember thinking, well, it's clean water. It came off the bridge and it's just going right into the river. And they said, no, it's not. If you have cars that go over it, there's rubber that comes off of their tires, there's smog that might get caught up in the rain that ends up on the ground. Not all of that water is clean, good water.
Wow.
So you do still have to do some level of filtration before it does finally make its way back to that water source. So looking at finding stakeholders, I hate that word because I feel like everyone uses it here and now it doesn't have much meaning to me. Finding people who care, who are decision makers, who can implement some of these strategies. Finding out who could be on my side to help explain to them that, hey, this is actually a problem. It doesn't look like it yet, but it is a problem. And so I don't really have a name for my company just yet. I have a name for the blog that I'm using to document my creating it. But I am putting together at the moment plans to develop these small micro projects and then launch them. And then as they get launched, show these to people and say, hey, these are ways that we've used. Could we implement this in your little village? Could we put this in your development? Because there are a lot of large real estate developments going on, but they don't actually deal with the wastewater either. They just,
oh no,
you know, it's when you see what some people are doing, their quote unquote creative solutions. Yeah, this raw sewage flows to a field. And you think to yourself, well, that's not really fixing the problem. You just put it over there.
Yeah. I think that, it's so funny because the United States, as far as build anything really, like the food industry, the buildings, the restrictions and the levels of checks and balances that you have to go through to get approved on things, like a total nightmare to deal with. But at the same point, hopefully as a result of that, we're not having, things where the sewage is just flowing into a field where my breakfast is growing.
Someone will try to explain to you, well, it's just fertilizer. It's good for you. And
sure.
That's my reaction. The very skeptical. Sure.
Let's see you eat it first, right? So I'm imagining you're not the first person there to see this problem. So have you been able to sort of band together with other people that are working on similar ideas, or is it I kind of feel like you're a lone island yet?
I feel like I'm a lone island, and I think it's because a lot of the entrepreneurs that I see are moving. A lot of the entrepreneurs that I've been able to find online that I see working on this are primarily focused on agriculture and agribusiness, which I totally understand. The government puts the majority of their money into that specific sector. But when it comes to looking at more of the infrastructure that they have around all of these things, I don't think that there's not an emphasis on it. I think it's just, there's just not a lot of funding there.
Right. It's not where the money is right now.
Yeah. Not until it becomes either A, a huge problem, or B, somebody shows them that there's a huge profit to be made.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's and even then the problem part is like, well, there's no money there. It's just money, you just have to spend the money. But I do think, and I hope that it's more of a global thing where you're starting to see a lot more social responsibility on these big companies and just companies in general. Like, I feel like people as consumers are a lot more becoming more adamant about making sure that companies are doing things the right way instead of, well, this is the best price, so it doesn't really matter. I feel like we're transitioning to a point where we're willing to spend more knowing that they're making an effort to help things progress in the right way.
Yeah. I want I want to believe that. I see with the food movement that there are a lot more people who are pushing to go organic and are pushing to go locally grown. I say this from a country where something as simple as the cereal we buy is imported, sometimes from America, which again, 4 hours, 5,000 miles for
Yeah.
Cheerios, which so I'm starting to see that transition. But when it comes to things like energy, for instance, I think a fair amount of that is financial. And I'm not terribly mad at it. Not terribly mad at it. One of the local shopping centers here actually covered their entire parking lot with solar panels.
Wow.
So yeah, I was trying to poke around to see what percentage of their average power consumption is supplied by the solar panels, and could not find the statistic, but I will let you I'll let you know and follow up. But one of the issues that we have in this country, especially, the country is 100, well, I'd say 80% run by hydroelectric, sorry, hydroelectric power. And there's one big dam that supplies the power for the majority of the country. Problem is that that area, it breaks down often because we only have the one power supply source. So every once in a while, you'll get a power cut. And by every once in a while, I mean, we've had a power cut twice this week, where anywhere from 2 hours to 12 hours, and you just have no lights on. And I think that the shopping center, in response to that, said, well, we lose money every day that we're not able to have people be in the building because there are no lights, because there's no refrigeration. So they put up solar panels. Once they put up the first round of solar panels, you immediately saw people only park where there were solar panels, and then refused to go into the store and just kept circling the block. And I think at some point the owners came out and realized, oh, it's an open air parking lot. So they had to put up a structure to hold these solar panels. They realized that the panels provided shade, which was previously lacking. So they covered half of it. So only people would only park on the one half and wouldn't go into the store if they had to park on the other side. So then they put up the other half, and now their shopping center is one of the most popular in the entire town. And they're able to increase the rents and whatnot. Financial decision, but they're going for a more renewable power source. So it's like some of the circumstances that create issues are also creating opportunity. I think is really what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that's very well said. And it makes sense, because I think even in your personal life, right? Like if nothing's really uncomfortable or problematic, we tend to stay the same. But as soon as there's, something's friction of some sort, then that's when you're pushed to think, okay, well, what should I be doing differently?
Yeah. Yes, most definitely. I mean, I love being able to drive down the street and you see solar panels on people's houses, and it's not necessarily because they want to protect the environment. I'm sure some of them that is the reason, but if the power goes out, now I don't have hot water in my house. So it's supplying something. I think the biggest leverage I have, that we have, is using some of the inconveniences of this local area to try to push people towards more sustainable choices. In dealing with wastewater, one of the problems that we're eventually going to hit as a country is that we don't have a lot of freshwater sources. So the idea that we're dispersing water into the ocean, water that otherwise could be cleaned and reused, okay, so let me just make this, do I have to make the problem worse, or do I have to have the solution before it gets worse? And it's the game I'm playing right now. But as I start to talk to more people, I think I'm going to get closer closer to a solution. But for right now, to break it into smaller pieces, right? The first thing to be able to make people aware of that there's a problem is to try to bring people to the problem, to see what it's like, to see them deal with it.
Yes.
And it was kind of why I wanted to reach out to you, because I saw that you were doing, you had a program where you took people on vacations, but they also got to sample real culture, but also got to do something to help the situation. And what I think one of the biggest issues here is that if people can't see that their behavior is causing problems, they don't know that there's something that they can do to fix it. So to be able to bring people and to draw people in, that we have a lot of citizens of this country who are expats living somewhere else, to be able to say, hey, we're going to go on a trip. We're going to visit a city. By the way, while we're there, we're going to take a look at some of the impacts of what being a human being in this particular region means. I need you to see that, because when I start talking to you about wastewater, I need you to see what it is. I want you to be able to swim in the ocean and play in the pools, but I also need you to contextualize where this water came from and where it's going to go once you're done with it. I love the ability to be able to walk somebody through that story and to be able to tell them and make it more concrete to them, but also have some fun along the way.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, you even think about like I don't know, the amount of trash that one person throws out in a week, right? It's nothing because it's gone. They come and take it away and then you start over again. But I think, if I were to go see what this accumulates to, it would probably have a big impact on what I'm doing, and like being more aware. I think in anything, it brings it to the front of mind. It helps you be an advocate for it, and it also helps change your actions. So I think you're going definitely in a good direction, just bringing awareness at this point. I think you and I both like to believe, like you were saying, like I have that positive mindset, like people are aware and things are changing, but at the end of the day, maybe not so much. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we have to have the hope. It's funny that you use the word away. I think we use that word too much. I have a colleague that I used to work with, and he used to laugh and say, haha, the American paradigm of away, right? That elusive, amorphous concept of away. Well, where is away, and what does away mean, right?
That's fantastic.
Just because it's over there doesn't mean it's magically gone, right?
Love that. Okay, well, see, now you're changing me already. Never gonna forget that.
Yeah, you're like, what do we call it? Like, and it's gotta, right? It can't be. It's got to be something that makes so clear, like, we're going to go bury this in Tim's backyard. I feel like if you explained it that way, especially to little kids, they would say, wait, that sounds like a terrible idea. Like, why are we doing that? But that's in areas like this, that's literally what happens, where if you have a neighbor who hasn't been to his property, like if he just has a lot of land but no house on it, okay, we're throwing it away. And it's literally in Tim's front yard. That's away, right? It's not at my house. But we actually have a landfill that they filled in 5 years, even though it was built for a service life of 15, because of this concept of away, and because people didn't understand that away meant like we're aggregating it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to shift topics a little bit, because when we spoke last time, we had talked about farming and some of the restrictions that they have there. And I don't know if you're familiar with Monsanto. Was it Monsanto?
Yeah.
And what you were telling me reminded me so much of what happened in this country with the farmers in Monsanto, and how, basically like they don't own their land anymore because of this company that came in and made all these regulations. And now crops as they originally were are, it's just transformed everything. So can you share again just a little bit about what's going
Sure,
on there?
sure. So at the moment, in order to prop up the agribusiness, there are a lot of grants that exist right now for countries to purchase seeds and fertilizers from outside. Unfortunately, what happens is that once that material comes into the country, so once you get, say, your corn seeds or your tomato seeds, you plant them, you get a harvest, the seeds that are actually in that food, you can't replant. Nothing will come from them.
Hmm.
So essentially what that means is that some of these farmers, are really doing subsistence type growing, where a big crate, so that's about a meter cubed, right? Of tomatoes, you maybe can sell that for $30 in the marketplace, which is actually pretty cheap. Because especially considering that a lot of that goes on to being processed food products that they sell for a lot more than that. So every year they don't make a lot of money, but every year they're forced to buy new seeds from whatever company is supplying them. In one sense, it's a kind of aid to keep people propped up, but when you have people stuck in the cycle of we've got to buy new seeds, and then we've got to plant them, and then we got to clear all the land and buy new ones every year, you kind of keep certain people in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, it's aid, but it's not really
It's not,
helping.
it's dependent aid.
Yeah, it's
Hmm.
it's
Um,
helping without the help. I'm not
so
sure.
why are the seeds genetically modified to not grow, or like
Some of them are
how?
genetically modified and some of them are hybrids.
Mm,
I believe there are a few seed banks that the country likes to work with, where they'll do breeding of non-GMO with some of these GMO seeds to hybridize them to get better yield, not necessarily better taste, but just better yield and more
right.
resilience to bugs. Um, oh, it bothers me. Um, but for whatever, because of the way that they're cultivated, you can't get them outside of a lab. They're grown in their farm factories and then they get dried and sent to you. So you don't know the person that made the seed. So if you have a complaint, you're complaining to, Acme XYZ LLC, and good luck if you get an answer. Whereas a movement that I'm really interested in is the organic, non-GMO sort of movement, where we practice things like seed saving, where if I'm growing seeds in one part of the country and you're growing seeds in a different country, we should be able to exchange and interchange and to crossbreed if they're the same kind, because your seeds, maybe you grow in a drier area and your seeds are more resilient to the heat.
Mm,
But if my seeds are better in a wetter area, maybe there's a combination there. Maybe the flavor's a little bit different. So we can put our two seeds together and get a third kind that appeals to the market better. I think that puts the power back in the hands of the farmers to be able to decide what they want and to be able to cater to their customers more effectively. Um, it's surprising, I think, to the people in our neighborhood, because I do the gardening at our house. So they come by and there's tomatoes and there's flowers. It's not normal that people who live in the suburbs do that. So really, I am trying to encourage people to start doing the gardening and the planting for themselves, to start growing their own food, but also doing it with the intention that at some point within the next year or two, I'd like to start doing organic seed production, to encourage people to grow their own food, but to also give a little bit more power back to the farmers. Because the seeds in one tomato can change a family's life.
mm-hmm.
I mean, it's different flavors, it's different textures, it's different tastes. To have a wide variety of food also helps, I think, the country, because maybe this one breed of corn is super susceptible to pests, but a different breed wouldn't be. Or maybe there's a hybridization of the two where we can blend two kinds, but it's not genetically modified. You don't have to come back to me to get the seed. You might choose to because it's easier than having to save it yourself, but it's not like you don't have to. You don't have to constantly go to the government to get the money to go get it. And I think it also puts more onus back on the farmers to say, okay, now you have to be responsible for the outcome. So if you want good yield, take care of what you've got this year. And of course, you know, you'll find new pests and you'll get around it, but find new ways to be organic, to be a little bit, I think, a little bit more choosy. Because when the government decides for you what they'll pay for, they also are essentially determining the diet of the entire country. Which I think is part of the problem in America, is that the government decides what you grow with whether you know it or not. So you don't actually control your own nutrition standards. That's not been true like 100, 200, 300 years prior.
I would say even 100, or I mean, I think right around the 50s is when things really started changing here, which is not that long ago. You know, my grandma, all my grandparents grew up on farms where they raised their own fruits and vegetables. Sorry, not fruits, because they lived in the north, but their own vegetables. And, you know, the chickens, my grandma would say she'd go out and she'd kill the chicken and take the feathers off the chicken and cut the chicken and cook the chicken. And that was just life at that point. So yeah, that's interesting. I never thought of it as the government controlling the diet, but 100%. And that's, I watched an obscene amount of documentaries on food and nutrition and things like that, and just the saturation of corn in everything, corn and palm oil. And, you know, you think about it, and that's what the government pays out for these farming lands is corn. So of course it's in all the food, because it's, you know, it's this full circle of the money coming back. So that's interesting.
And it's not to say that the government's bad or anything, but it's like, do you trust a politician with an MBA to decide for you which of these 38, you know, breeds of broccoli your family should be eating?
Not only that, but like, don't you have better things to do than worry about what's being planted? I don't know.
Correct. Like, for me, if you don't have a degree in plumbing, please don't touch the pipes in my house. Like, I don't want it.
Yeah, fair. Well, it sounds like you have more than your hands full with ideas and visions and just everything that you have trying to work on over there. So how can we support you?
Sure. Well, I have a blog, bellbuilder.com. So like, I'm constantly posting interviews with other people that I'm working with, people who kind of give me ideas or encouragement. I'm starting to put up content to cover some of the activities that I'm currently working on. And well, I'm going to be working with you to try to put together a trip to bring people over here. So if people would like to come along and see what's going on in this country, see what they can do to help, whether they have a skill or if they would like to help bring more heirloom seeds that we can get going and start planting and start an actual trade, I would love that. But I will put up a list on the Bell Builder blog, and then people can come and see what areas I'm specifically focusing on, so that they can also take a look and see if they have skills that they can offer.
So cool. Yeah, I know a handful of engineers actually that are kind of similar to you, I think, where they, you know, they're doing these jobs, but they see this opportunity to do so much more and really wanting to have a position where they're working more in the sustainable market. So I'll definitely have to connect you with some of them as well.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. And then, so before we sign off, I like to ask all my guests one final question.
Sure.
And that is, if you were given a sailboat to sail around the world in, what would you name it?
Whoa. That's not where I thought that was going. Hmm. Okay, the first word that comes into mind is the expression. And I think because if we use our words effectively and precisely, you don't even have to say the whole sentence, just that hint of an idea is enough to carry you from place to place. And you pick up passengers and drop them off where you need to. Yeah. I wouldn't be on the boat by myself. No, I'm bringing stuff with me.
That's beautiful. Very well said. Very eloquent.
Thank you.
I like that.
I have enjoyed talking with you. You are a very lovely person.
Thank you. I feel the same. I look forward to continuing our conversation and obviously working on future travel plans to Ghana and just all the cool things that you have to show us there. So thank you so much for your time. I'm sure this won't be the last time we connect like this.
Absolutely not. All right, be well.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, spread the word. Share with a friend, post it, comment, shout out. Let us know. Be sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. Follow us on our socials and be sure to check out stateofunity.org for upcoming group experiences. This is Cara Irene, hoping we leave you feeling inspired to do more.